So I have the gears here, and rather than take them in and use a vise, if you don't have a vise, I just used a vise script. And I put a piece of cardboard behind here so I didn't tear it up. And I just pressed it slowly around and around until the T-nut is all the way in. And then I just put those guys on there to make sure they fit. Now, this gear here, I went ahead and I took the pre-made sleeve off of here, the one that we already made, and I just slid this one in here to help me visualize it and to line these things up. So the first thing I did was kind of gratifying here is I put this guy here and just held it in there and spun it like this, and I've got a nice smooth rotation all the way through. I don't have any holes drilled in here, so what I was going to do is I put these pieces of cardboard in the spacer there to try to center this gear off the center piece here. So I'm going to measure and try to make sure I've got this gear as close as I can to the center. And then I've got a drill bit right here that is 13/64. It just came in a drill bit set, and it slides just inside that T-nut. So what I'll do is, once I get this nice and centered, I'm going to draw kind of a triangle, and I'm going to line this first one up, and I'm going to go through here and just drill a hole. So I do not know exactly how, so I'm going to give that just a little bit of play. We need a little bit of room. Okay, now I'm going to need to go with a bigger one, but before I do that, so let's see here, 360 degrees is a full circle. So if I'm doing a triangle, divide that by 3, I want 120. But I have 180 here, so minus 120 is going to put me at 60. So I'm going to be right here on this tooth here. That guy right there. I know I see him, but and 60 should be right there. Okay, so let's take that guy out for just a moment. Now I haven't opened up our eye hooks just yet. I'll need to bend those, but for this purpose, here's our gear number 1. And I know this is threaded. I don't know if anybody has thought about that or not, but I've been using a threaded rod for this gear for years, and it runs smooth. You would think that it might catch because it's not like a smooth carriage bolt, but it still spins just fine. There's enough support inside that hole that you'll see that I hope we gave it enough space. You can see that shifts just a little bit. These are all done by hand here. And I think at the beginning I said that I had made a dozen or so of these guys that just never turned out. And part of that is this part right here. Trying to get these gears to line up. So big part of luck involved here. Okay, so there we go. All right, so see here how it's touching the wall? I gave it too much slack. See, it's binding up. So we're close, and this is where you've got to do some of that fine tuning. Got to figure this guy out. So we'll do a little bit of fine tuning here, and then we'll come back. I am excited, folks. You saw just a moment ago where we put the back on, or just the gear, right? I didn't have this attached just yet, but I just used the gear, and I put it up here with these other gears. Oops, sorry, I was showing you my walls. But I put this gear on here, and we drilled these first 3 holes, and it didn't work because it was too loose. So I marked them. I was like, oh man, this is too it hits here and here and here and here, all these spots, and I was going to go start to sand away. And I didn't have this center axis in just yet, and that's the whole crux of this design, which makes this different. So before I started to sand, I remeasured everything. I got a piece of plywood out, and I did a little template, and I used this thingy, compass, protractor, I don't know, I gotta look it up. I was using this guy a bunch too. But I put a bolt in here, and then I took my wheel, and I drew a circle here for the wheel. And I centered it, and I looked, and everything was within 1/8 of an inch all the way around. So that was good. And then I measured these gears to see if I needed to sand them. Like I marked 1 or 2 that I thought were a little bit high, but when I did the measurements here, they were all within this guy here. Then I took the little gears, and I measured them 2 1/4, and then from the center to the out is 1 3/8. So I took from the outside of the wheel, and I measured this gap right here, and that was 7/8 right there between the inner tooth to the outer wheel. And then I just added it up. I just mathed it out on this board here on my template, and I drew some lines here, and then I drilled 3 holes on this circle with this guy. And then I took my bolts, and I shoved them in here on this plate, and I put the gear here, and I spun it, and it worked. So with the center bolt on this template, it works. So what I did was I put it just like, well, not like this, because you can't see the, see, I do have the hole here. So what I did is I took my back plate and I put it right here. Now when I did my back plate and I measured it, I noticed I was 1/8 of an inch off on the back plate on my circle. So I didn't want to center this guy on here, but I wanted to center it on the hook. So I looked down, and you can see the pencil mark right there. And I looked around, and I made sure I could see that pencil mark. And I centered it, and I used the bolt so that I made sure that I centered the gear on the back on the bolt, so that these two are centered on the axis. Then I pulled out the eye hooks and made them a hook. And rather than glue this thing, because I wanted to test it, I just put a couple screws in it. Then I threw this guy in here like this. All right. I lined it up and spun it a little bit. Now that the back is on and I have it centered, that's the important part, it has to be centered on the bolt, and I used the math to where to put the hooks. Look at this! Look at this! Now it gets a little bit of a rough spot, but look! It spins! So we have just a little bit of resistance in a couple little spots, But those couple little spots are just like what we were having in the other one. But that math gives us that little bit of play on all the gears, and it is spinning. I'm so excited. So there's two last pieces here. Is we have this backer board and then a handle. Now on those other ones, I would use the CNC machine and make a spacer because we got to come out enough for that T-nut. But what I'm going to do is I've got a whole bunch of 1/4-inch washers. When I put this guy in and I put the screw through it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little pilot hole first to see where it's going to come through. And then when I start the screw through, I'm going to put two washers. So I've got the handle template drawn out here. And this is what it looks like. And I have 1.5 inches here. And so what we have is I have 6 inches here for the back plate, and then it comes out 1.5 inches, and then I have a bolt hidden right here. But I have 2 of them, and I screw it together. So I'm going to cut 2 of these guys out, and that gives me a double thickness there, 2 3/4 inch, and then it just has 1.5 inches here for the handle, and then I just have a nice, just a curve, just a random curve here. So to get that random curve on the board, all I did was take a piece of cardboard, and here is 1.5 inches. At the 6-inch mark, it's 2 inches up. So I marked it at 2 inches here, and then I just held the cardboard curved like similar like this with a couple fingers and just drew a line there. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's never thinner than 1.5 inches. So now I'm going to cut this guy out, and I just used a washer to get this little rounded. I think it just looks nice having a little rounded edge there. Less things to poke people with. You get this nice little rounded edge there. So what I'm going to do is, rather than try to trace this out twice, I'm going to cut it out once, and then I'll take it and set it here, and I'll trace it again. Because again, for me, it's more about consistency than being right. I ran out of screws that fit out of my packet here. So I had to run to the hardware store, and that one bolt that I got was actually 7 inches. And it was a little bit too long. I don't want to have something too far out, because then it started to become an obstruction people will bump into. So I got a 6-inch. Got some more. Okay, so we've got our handle. Glued that guy on there. Whoa, that guy sunk in good. Must hit a void. And then I try to alternate. Okay, so I think that'll be enough to give the handle the support that it needs. 3/8. Okay. All right. Just like that. it's hitting that screw. Might have been a little bit too close to the center there. I think that's just about the thickness of the bolt. I probably should have started with that guy. So now it's going to be a little hard to keep that straight. Come on, man. There we go. Okay, so we're going to have the bolt hidden in the back. Okay. Kind of collapsed some of those fibers there. So there we go. So our bolt is hidden. And of course I'm going to do this the other way. I'm going to put the handle on it and then go this way, put the nut on there, and then shrink it. So we'll get that done here. But I always put the handle on last. I've got a bunch of 1/4-inch washers. And when I spaced them off of the other machine, it takes 4 of these guys to match that wood spacer. So Loctite's on, it's dried. So now what I've got to do is when I put the wheel on, got to line the hooks up the right direction. If you got one this way and one that way, that just makes them a little bit harder to loop on the yarns when you're going back and forth. But so let's put them all somewhat vertically. Okay. Hey, look at that. Woo! Looking good. Okay. Oh, you see that guy fell off and then that one moved. So that's all right. I have to put him back that way. Come on. There we are. Oh. Okay. Okay, I think I like that one right there. The top one lines up real nice. All right. Now I got my really long screw. And 4 washers. Okay, it's starting to come through. I got a little bit more. There we go. And 4 washers. And then line it up with my pre-drilled hole there. So just like that. I don't want to do it all the way just yet, because I want to be able to adjust these guys and get these ones in there too. So grab another screw. 4 more washers. Okay, make sure we're still lined up. Now there's a little bit of a gap here, and it's a little short here, but that's okay. The whole concept is that there's a 1/4 inch play, so as long as this guy will spin, and see, we don't have the center bolt in just yet either. There we go. So see, there we go. Pulled that up, nice and neat. Okay, so I had to play around with it. There are a couple ones I could have sanded them off, but just readjusting them and shifting them right there, I was able to get it a couple times. I feel a little bit of resistance, but not much. And so when you get going, you should be able to bump through that. So I'm going to leave it right there. I'm happy with that. It's a good thing we checked that before we got everything on. Save us a little bit of time there. So I'm going to try to get both these washers in at the same time before I screw them in. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the trick is going to see if they stay on. There you go. I'm going to try to put these ones on. Guess it'll help if I line them up. Whoop! One fell off. 2 fell off. Okay. Gotta keep those even there. And the center is still moving. Very good. Oh. There we go. See, she's got a little bit of a catch that we can work through. I dig it. All right. I usually put 4 in for the handle. So I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the other thing we've got to do, this is a 6-inch base. So at 3 inches, that's where the bolt's at. So we got our paddle bit. Try to get away from using that bench as my tool. And then that, ta-da, completely sinks in there. We like that. All right. Okay. All right. And then just throw a little pilot hole in there so they don't split the wood. Boy, that one was horrible. A little better. Okay. So what I'm going to do, doesn't matter really which direction you're in, but I try to get it somewhat center, so right about there. So that one's going all the way through there before it even catches anything. So that one's going to take a little bit. Line that up with my pilot hole there. Look at that. Woo! So even that little catch there, with the leverage of the handle and the center bolt, that's really going to help us out. Okay, so for the handle itself, I just used a wooden dowel, and I took a Sharpie and marked. You lay it flat. This is a little bit too thick, but I used a book, and I marked it back and forth, and it drew out the center point. Then I took the 3/8 inch drill bit and I started on one side and started on the other. So you can see here it's pretty center, but here it's off a little bit. But that guy goes on in there. Like such. Put the nut in there. And then I pull it just a little bit and that countersinks it in there. And there we go. Now it is a little bit rough. But there's no yarn on it either. When we put yarn on it, it'll help pull things together. And the other thing I was thinking is I put 4 washers in here. If I put 3, it'll hold this a little bit closer. See how there's a little bit of play in there? I actually like that play. I think that helps it to go. So there's a proof of concept right there. By hand tools. This design will work with that center bolt being the focal key point. Those hooks all are spinning in unison. Whee! And that center axis is holding. Now I'm not putting any pressure on this bench, or I could go a little easier. So I'm very excited, folks. I will record us making a rope with this guy just to show that we can do it. Because that other machine I have spins and the gears spin. But when you put tension on the yarn, it don't work. So there is the proof of concept. You can cut this out with the tools. And you got a rope machine. I'd put it on this bench, but I'll make another one and put this guy permanently on one of that as a home. So thanks for watching, folks. Hey, if you have any questions, feel free to holler at us. And you might see us around. I'll start putting some of the things we do out at the Pioneer Rope Walk and some of the things that we'll do out at the Renaissance Fair when we get out that direction.